Hey Wargamers, over the past few days we've been getting some great previews from the Warhammer community team about the different clan cultures that are going to be in the new Ork Codex. So I want to kind of give an overview of those different clan cultures and really talk about what I think the best clan culture is so far, and that is the Evil Sons, and what that means for not only orc armies but also people playing against orcs, particularly T'au. So that's what we're going to talk about today. If you like this video, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, that way you don't miss any of my upcoming 40K content. Okay, so let's start with some basics, basically looking at what the army-wide special rule is, and that is, of course, DACA. Okay, so this rule is going to apply to anything that has the DACA special rule, which is going to be pretty much all orc units. It says, each time you roll an unmodified hit roll of a 6 for an attack with a ranged weapon made by a model in this unit, that hit roll succeeds regardless of any modifiers. In addition, immediately make an additional hit roll against the same target using the same weapon, and those hits can't themselves generate more hits, and it uses the initial profile of that weapon. So there's a few things right off the bat that are huge for any orc army. One is that they're not going to be penalized by multiple modifiers, really. For an army that typically hits on 5, always hitting on a 6 means that, yeah, they might have a -1 for running, or they might have a -1 for moving with a heavy weapon, or they might have a -1 for shooting at something like Eldar, but they're not going to have multiples of those, which is huge. That means that they're not going to ever not be able to hit a target, which is really good because there are times currently in the index where orc units just can't hit something. They have to hit on a 7 or 8 or something like that. That's not an issue anymore. Additionally, you're going to be generating, another shot with, on average, half of your attacks. So, like, if we take a unit of 30 orc boys and they have, assault 2 weapons, that's 60 shots. A third of those are going to hit natively, so 20 shots, but then half of those shots are also going to produce an additional shot. So that's an additional 10 shots that are generated. Of course, you have to roll those to hit again, so only a third of those, so another 3 shots. But nonetheless, that's quite a buff in the number of shots that you're actually putting out of that one unit. And that applies for, most of your units, if not all of your units. So that makes a big difference. You're ignoring a lot of penalties, and you are, on top of that, generating additional attacks. This is huge. This makes a really big difference in the mathematics of how orcs work, and is a really nice buff on top of that. The Goffs Clan culture is each time you roll an unmodified hit roll of a 6 for an attack with melee weapons made by a model with this culture, immediately make an additional hit roll against the same target using the same weapon. These ones can't themselves generate additional hit rolls. Alright, so this is essentially DACA, but like punchy, or slashy, or stabby. Pick one. So this is really interesting. It makes orcs just better all around. So not only are they better at shooting, but they're also better at close combat. It's okay, but it does require them to get in close combat, which of course is the goal. But, there's a big difference between being good when you get into close combat and getting into close combat, period. So this is a context dependent special rule. There's a lot of things that seem to be in the new codex that are going to facilitate that, happening, that being able to actually get into close combat is probably going to be easier in this new book than it is in the index, which is good, but still it's reliant on them actually getting there. So it's a special rule that you're not going to be able to use probably on turn 1 or maybe even turn 2, that you're going to have to use on a relatively small portion of the game. And so for that reason, I think it's a little bit weaker than some of these other cultures, but still pretty good. The snakebite culture is roll a dice each time a model with this culture loses a wound. On a 6, the wound is not lost. If a model has a similar ability, you choose one of those abilities, and you can't use both. Alright, so this is a 6-up feel no pain save army-wide. Really not bad at all, considering that most orcs have really poor saves, so you're essentially doubling their save. Or actually better than that, because feel no pain rolls are not modified by AP. So really nice if you're taking a large model count army, this is going to add up. If you're taking a small model count army, this isn't going to be as valuable because you're already probably going to have fairly good saves. Yes, this adds something on top of that, which is desirable, but really you're not going to get enough wounds through, or have to deal with this enough to really make it pay itself off. This is really something that's going to make mob armies that much better. The Bad Moons culture is that you re-roll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by models with this culture in the shooting phase. Alright, so for an army that's typically hitting on 5s, I think this is pretty bad. It's actually not that useful, right? Because if we're re-rolling rolls of 1, we're only actually converting a third of those into hits if we're hitting on 5s actually. So it's, 1/3 of 1/6 of our shots are actually going to be converted into hits. And so if you're using an army that's primarily, hitting on 5s, that's not the best of options. However, if you are taking particular units that have better ballistic skill, like, for example, a Stampa, that Stampa is going to benefit much more from this culture because it only misses on a 1 or a 2 at full health. And so you're converting half of your misses generally into, or close to half of your misses into hits, which is a big deal. So I think this is good for some units, but in general, when I think of the types of armies I've faced in the past with orcs, this isn't going to make a big difference for them. The Evil Sons culture is add 1 to the move characteristics of models with this culture, adding 2 instead if that model is a speed freak keyword model, and add 1 to advance and charge rolls made for them. In addition, models with this culture do not suffer the penalty to their hit rolls for advancing and firing assault weapons. Okay, so there's a few things going on there that I think all are wonderful things for orc armies. One is that you are automatically just moving 1 inch further. So if we're talking about boys, they're moving 6 inches instead of 5 inches. And then if they are advancing, you're adding more to those rolls as well. So instead of averaging like a 3.5, we're averaging a 4.5 on our advanced roll. Overall, that means that we're getting, somewhere between 10 and 6 plus 4.5, somewhere between 10 and 11 inches on our movement phase instead of, only 5 inches. So you're, doubling the movement of your orcs, and you don't pay any penalty to your ballistic skill. So that means that instead of hitting on 6s, now you're hitting on 5s. So that's double the hits. You are essentially doubling the number of models in terms of fire output that you have, which is huge. That makes a big difference. And not only that, you're closer to the enemy now. So that's really valuable. The reason why I think that this is the best culture so far, I don't know, maybe Friday we're going to get a better culture revealed, or maybe there's going to be some in the book that are just better that they haven't already shown us. That wouldn't be the first time that something like that has happened, of course. But overall, I think this is the best culture because it addresses multiple aspects of the orc army, and it's something that you can use every turn, every phase. You can use this. This is really a valuable culture because it addresses problem number 1 for close combat armies, and that is getting into combat. You're able to do that more easily now. There are benefits in certain units that allow you to advance and then charge as well. So if you're building a Evil Sons army, you are going to have access to that as well. And so we are really facilitating the movement of units into close combat. And while we're doing it, we're also increasing our fire output because we still have access to Daka Daka. We still have access to all of the units, but now we are also ignoring the penalty to advance and shoot assault weapons, which most orc weapons are assault weapons. So this works out really well, and it works out particularly well for, I guess really any unit. Evil Sons is going to use vehicles a lot, so you're going to see a lot of buggies and the new buggies basically. You're going to see a lot of war bikes, but this also works really well for boys. So I really do think that this is the best clan culture because of that. It works for pretty much every unit, and it really facilitates the movement of units into assault, which is what you really want to do, especially if you have close combat oriented army like orcs are. So this is going to work for everybody and really help you out in the long run, I think. Okay, so that leaves the question of what do we think orc armies are going to look like and how do we counter them? So I think I've kind of answered that first question already. I think they're going to be Evil Sons armies for the most part. I think they're going to be extremely mobility focused, very close combat focused, but also being able to dish out a fair amount of firepower on their way into close combat, which I think is really the winning combo, right? If you're able to not only do well in close combat, but shoot on your way there, you're going to be doing well in a lot of cases. So if we are looking at what we need to do to counter that, we need to be defensive against assault armies. We need to also be mobile. We need to be able to move. We need to be able to shoot. And so from a T'au perspective, that kind of gives us 3 different options. One option is to go with T'au Septs. So we have our 5s to hit on Overwatch. I think this is, pretty useful, of course, because it will deter charging, but, that still requires you to be charged, and we generally don't want to do that. Another option is Voila. We can try to outrun orcs, which if they're bringing, bikes, that's going to be a lot harder to do, but if they're mostly infantry-based, that's a little bit more doable, especially since T'au move faster than orcs natively, and they could advance and shoot like normal also. So there's some play there. Another option, of course, is going with Farsight Enclaves. And this is something that I think we really have to see what the Ork Codex looks like and what the meta is around Ork army construction. But Farsight Enclaves can actually be a really good counter to Orks because, well, they're Farsight Enclaves. And if you bring Farsight himself, you're going to have extra benefits when facing Orks. So this could be kind of a spoiler list in a tournament setting where Orks are going to do well against a lot of different armies unless they come up against something like Farsight Enclaves, and then they're going to be at a pretty severe disadvantage. So you could see an increased popularity of Farsight Enclaves armies as a response to an increased prevalence of Ork armies, and I think that would be interesting. We could go with a construction that's primarily based on Fire Warriors and Crisis Suits, and this would actually combat a lot of the aspects of the Ork army right off the bat. We have Fire Warriors to take care of infantry, and then we have Crisis Suits to take care of things like bikes and other vehicles. So Farsight Enclaves really does have a place in fighting against Orks, which is cool and fluffy, and that makes a lot of sense. So I really am looking forward to see what the new Ork Codex brings in terms of unit upgrades and additional cultures, special rules, things like that. But overall, so far, the Ork Codex looks like a winner. It looks like it's going to do really well. Of course, only time will tell. It's been said plenty of times before that, this next codex is going to, break the game and be super dominant, and then it turns out to be, relatively mediocre. So I don't think that's going to be the case with Orks. I think they're going to be pretty competitive, but we'll just have to wait and see. It's really going to come down to points costs in a lot of cases. So let me know what you think in the comments below. What are you most excited about with the new Ork Codex? And of course, happy wargaming.
Hey everyone, this video was made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there. Special thanks to Errant Fox, Max Harrison, No Excuses Panda, Jared Egler, Nick Steele, T'au Oswald, Brian Mann, Jake Johnson, Scott J. Smith, Stephen Cohen, Eric Jackson, Andy M. Young, Benjamin, Giovanni DiMaggio, Julian Peck, Peter Benjamin Parker, RP, Timothy K. Piney, and Yuhai Penguin.